Hello and welcome to my second live stream in this series. I'm doing a quick pre-check. If you're already with me, just hang tight for a couple minutes. All right, I see myself on YouTube. No, I hear myself. Let me turn off my speakers. All right, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitch. All right, I'm live everywhere. If you are here, say hi. Oops, I typoed my own thing. Join in. Thanks for joining. I meant to say joining. Oh wells. I haven't gotten a lot of response this time, unlike last time. Last time, I think it was the biggest show I've done. I think I had close to 20 people at one moment. I haven't gotten a lot of response to this one, but that's okay. We're doing it anyway. And a lot of people usually pop in. I see a few people. Got still a minute or so before it's time to start. So I'm not gonna dive quite yet. I'm gonna give everybody who's coming on time a chance to be here. And now my clock says it's 3. Started. Recap for anybody who wasn't here last week. I'm just starting. I barely started last week. I sort of test scaffolding last week. I'm going to hopefully start writing some features for a CouchDB compatibility layer on top of Postgres. My use case is I would like to be able to write an app that talks to CouchDB or the CouchDB API, but host it on Google or Amazon RDS, that sort of thing. And they tend to support Postgres, but not CouchDB, because CouchDB is kind of a niche product. So that's the product or the feature I'm building. Now I have an open source library I've been working on for many years. It's been public. It's on version 4 already, called Kivik. And that's where I'm adding this feature. I'm adding this feature to that library. So that's what I'll be working on today. Let's see how I want to do. Maybe I'll do it like this. Yeah, how about that? If my face gets in the way for anything, just holler at me. And by the way, if you can't hear me or anything like that, please let me know in chat. I will try to respond to any questions I see in chat as well. So yeah, let's keep this interactive if possible. And if you're just here to watch, that's cool too. So last week I mentioned that I sort of did this to-do, sort of my next steps were going to be to do this. And I realized later that that's actually wrong. Before I can do put, get, and delete, which work on documents, I need to have databases in place. But even before that, I probably should add this test suite that I set up last week to my CI pipeline. So that's what I'm going to do first thing, is I'm going to add that to my CI pipeline, which is running in Git Hub Actions. And I actually need to add two things. I want to add the test suite to the test, and I want to add, run the linter on this sub module. If you're familiar with Go, it ships with things called modules, and I'm using multiple modules in this repo. It's not something I normally do, but I need to support different versions of Go for complicated reasons that don't matter today. The point is I need to, the linter that's set up now ignores the new submodule, so I want to add that too. Let's start with tests though. So I already have another submodule with tests for SQLite. So I'm basically just going to copy this whole section here and make it work for Postgres. So I'll rename this PG. And I get to decide what versions of Go I want to support. I think I'll do 124 and 125. I started on 124 last week. And then since then, I added 125 support to the entire repo. Unless or until I have a feature that requires 125, though, I'm happy to stick with 124. Makes it slightly more accessible to people if anybody ever wants to use it. I need to change that. Honestly, I think that's all I need to do. So I just copied the configuration for my SQLite tests, which runs against 4 versions of Go. This one will just run against 2. Change the name, change the path. I think that's it. Let me, got some fancy reformatting going on here. Not sure why my editor decided to do that, but sure, I'm happy to commit that. Now, while I'm here, I think it's going to be just as easy to add the job for Postgres here. I'm just going to copy. So I have 2 jobs here that I use or not jobs, but steps. These are just steps in the same job for SQLite. Let's just change the names and paths here as well. Now, what I'm not sure of is if I actually have configuration from my linter. First, I want to check if I have configuration for the linter for SQLite, and I do. So I'll just copy that configuration for PG. Let's run the linter and see if I have any lint already. I might already have some failures since I wasn't testing it before. Seems to pass. That's fine. I'll just add that to the previous commit. I think that's all I need to do. Oh, I should have created a branch for this. Let's call it PGCI for no reason. So let's go ahead and get that pushed up and get those tests running and make sure it works as expected. Where's my browser window? I probably don't have one here. We got a failure. That's interesting. Let's see what's going on here. What? Okay, funny. Why didn't that fail? I mean, I haven't run this since last week, but let's see what happens here. Funny. Database name is required in DSN. I do remember last week I added a test for some of that, but I didn't run the whole test suite. So I've already got a problem. Let's work on fixing that. Good thing I added the test to CI to help me catch these problems. Is it? I think it's pg.go. No, I need to test. All right, so so the failure is happening line 32 here. Yeah, so I need to give it our database name here. I'll just make one up for right now. Or I'll let my autocomplete do it. Sure, why not? Let's see if that likes the test pass. Yeah, good enough. Oh, that reminds me, one of the things I'm going to probably do today is set up test containers to run Postgres so I can run my tests against an actual Postgres database. So that'll probably be the theme for today. Actually, is setting up test containers. I don't think it'll be difficult. It probably won't take the full 2 hours, but that's a good exercise. So that's what I'll be doing today. It looks like. Let's see how these tests are going in CI now. All right. Well, at least it's not failing yet. We have some tests passing. PG tests. That's great. Both version 1.24 and 1.25 have passed. Let's see about that linter. That'll probably take a little bit longer. In fact, that does take longer because it's a single job that runs a linter for everything in sequence rather than in parallel jobs. So I'll just pull it up here. We can look at the details. Looks like it's already done. I did see here. PG worked. So here's where it ran the linter against the PG. No, here's the linter against PG, and here's where it validated the go.mod file for PG. So both of those passed. So we're good to go there. Yeah, so I got a question on chat here from YouTube, from GK. Question is, sorry I couldn't join last week. Hey, no problem. And are we trying? So we are trying to use a CouchDB API application to connect to Postgres. That's basically right. So the idea is to build a CouchDB compatibility layer on top of Postgres. This is not to use the CouchDB API to talk to existing Postgres data. That might be interesting. That's not what this is. This is simply to allow you to use a Postgres database as a CouchDB database. And as I mentioned at the top of the recording today, the idea is to be able to build an app that uses CouchDB, but it's easier to host in the cloud because Amazon and Google and other cloud providers often provide managed Postgres, but virtually nobody provides managed CouchDB. So this would allow you to use a hosted and managed Postgres instance as CouchDB for an application. Now, I think this is a fairly niche use case, maybe for small applications, or maybe a test environment or something. I wouldn't imagine that a big corporate enterprise style application would want to do that. They'd probably want to go to the effort of managing their own CouchDB instance. But if that doesn't make sense for your use case, then that's kind of the idea here, to be able to use managed Postgres at the cloud in place of managed CouchDB, since that doesn't really exist. All right, we're almost done here. 2 tests about to pass, and then I'll hit that merge button. And then I think I'll just start on test containers. So the goal will be to run Postgres in test containers and Docker when I'm running my tests. So I'm trying to decide the order. Do I want to do that first, or do I want to write a test that fails that requires that first? I'll probably write a test first. I don't think that's going to take very long. All right, why is this last test taking forever? I'm just going to hit merge. I didn't make any changes related to that, so it shouldn't be an issue. All right, now back to our console here. All right, so let's look at this list of tests that I mentioned from last week. I have sort of a to-do list here. And as I mentioned already, this is not quite right. Like, my priority shouldn't be this. I need to do database stuff first. So I need things like DB exists. DB exists. Maybe all DBs. That's just, there's a list of all databases. DB's stats. I think stats is also one. That's just for a database. I think we have a create DB. Yep. Create DB is probably the very first one because we can't really test anything else until we can create a DB. And then there's also a destroy DB. Where is that one? Here it is. I think I will start with create DB, probably, and then probably destroy DB. And for create DB to work, I'm going to have to add the test containers implementation. So that's as good a place to start as any, I think. Let's do that. I'm just going to create a quick commit with this reordering of to-dos. Now, I already have this client.go, which has a bunch of stubs in it. So I'm basically going to create this. I think what I'll do, I think the pattern I'm going to use, I did this for the SQLite implementation I did a year or so ago. I think I'm going to create one file per sort of method, top-level method, at least to start with. Maybe that becomes too repetitive or redundant. You know, maybe I get a bunch of tiny files, but to start with, I'm going to do that. And that will allow this client.go, and I think I have a db.go. It'll allow these to sort of be like my to-do lists. So I'm going to create a createdb.go and a createdb-test.go. Now, the first thing you have to do in this project is add this boilerplate license at the top. It's one of the sort of requirements of the Apache license. And then I'm going to move this stub from client.go to my new file. And I'll just create a commit with that. All right. Now I want to start writing some tests. And the, oops, oh, I put that in the wrong place. That should go here. Let's reapply that commit. So I'm just going to create a test. Doesn't do anything yet. I'm going to make it run in parallel to .parallel. It's good practice whenever it's possible to do that for a number of reasons. One, makes your tests faster. That's nice. But perhaps more important, if your tests can run in parallel concurrently, that helps prove that your tests are robust against concurrency issues or something like that. So it's a nice thing to do there. Now, I like to, so I use a testing library that I wrote that isn't really, like it has a bunch of rough edges, but I still use it because it makes my life easier. It's called Testy. I'm going to use that here. But before I do that, I'm going to create a struct called test, or a struct type called test that contains sort of the configuration for each test. And then right now I'm going to leave it empty. Actually, I'll go ahead and add client because I know I'm going to need that. And then I guess I can add my, I can add my expectations, options, and then want errors is a string. Want status. Okay, so these are my, and I may add to this, but these are the basically the input. So C is going to be this. I should just call that client. I don't have a special context argument. I don't have a need for that in this case. DB name is this argument, and the options are here. And then I have my expectations. I expect an error, and I expect an error status. And I'll probably need some sort of function to, like a check function or something, to validate that the database was properly created. I'll worry about that when I get to it. For now, I just want to have this in place so I can start to write my test runner. So I mentioned I'm going to use testy, which basically provides some helpers to make test-driven or table-driven tests little bit easier. So I create my tests this way, and then I'm gonna be adding my tests with this test.add. But first, I'm gonna write my runner. Once again, 2.parallel to make sure each one of these runs in parallel. Now, let's do t.context. Basically, this kivik.http status function looks at an error and returns the HTTP status code associated with that error. So that way, that's a way, since CouchDB uses HTTP as its main interface, this is just a way to expose those HTTP errors, whether it's 400 or 404 or 500 or whatever. So this is how I validate that I get the expected value. So let's see. I want to start with a simple test. Let's maybe do a test with an invalid name, a name that can't be created. Actually, let me start by creating a to-do list. That's always a good idea when you're doing TDD. Have a list of the tests you want to do. Valid DB name. What are some other cases? Network error. Database already exists. Database created successfully. That's fine. Database creation failed is kind of the same as network error. There's not from the standpoint of this library, those would be the same. So I don't need two different tests for that I know of. If I'm proven wrong later, I can change that. Yeah, I think that's fine. At least to start with, I can always add to the I don't know, why did I put TDD there? I can always add to my list later on. Hi there, Ryan. Ryan says on LinkedIn, good timing. I guess it is good timing. Glad you could make it here. All right. So I want to add a test. Let's do the first one. Invalid database name. So an easy way to do that, let me think. Actually, I'm not sure what an easy way to do that is. I know there are some characters that are not supported in CouchDB. I think the main way to do it is to start with an underscore, but let me just look up the rules from the official documentation if I can find it here. It's hard for me to read that. Let me zoom in. If I can't read it, I'm sure you can. Let me zoom in here a bit. So I want here we go. Get. I don't want get. I want put. Here we go. Must begin with a lowercase letter. Well, that's easy to violate. Let's do that. Let me get a link to this so I can share that in my test documentation. All right, so that's more or less what I want. Now I need to get a valid client object. This is where I'm going to need my test containers. I guess I can just do that for right now, right? It's not going to work. Well, it might work, I guess. Yeah, I guess it could work. I don't need a database connection to an existing Postgres to validate that it's a valid name, do I? So yeah, I guess this in principle should work. So let's run the test here. The test is not going to pass because my function doesn't do anything right now. It just returns error unsupported. And I want it to now return an error with this string and this status. So let's make that happen. So I don't need the context yet. I do need DB name, and I don't need driver options yet. So underscores for that. Now, let me see here. Was there a regular expression? Yeah, I could just copy this straight from the documentation. I'll bet I already have this somewhere. Let me check. Because I must. That looks like it right here. I should probably put that in a standardized location. I don't know. I guess I have to think about this. It's just a single regular expression. Is it worth creating a shared library for that? Probably not. I'll just copy it. If this was like a whole bunch of methods that did database validation, probably worth it. But you know what? A single line of copied code, as the Go proverbs say, a little bit of duplication is better than a little bit of dependency. So we have this. I don't know why it thinks driver would have that. In fact, I don't know where it thinks driver.new error even comes from. That's just ridiculous. So this internal is a bit of a wart. I'll copy it from over here. I have this weird alias for this library. It has to do with the way I renamed things in the past, and I haven't bothered to try to think of a cleaner solution. So that's what's going on there. But whatever. Status, and then is it error? No, what are the fields? Message or error? I think message is fine. Let's do %Q. That's a little bit more readable. Now my test is going to fail again because I changed the. Actually, it won't fail because this is a regular expression. Yeah, let's just run it. I was thinking it would fail because I changed the verbiage of the error, but since this is a regular expression, it's fine. So the test passes now. That's kind of nice. So that's kind of nice because I didn't have to go to the full effort of setting up test containers just to build my sort of first test. But if I want to do something more important than that, I probably do want to set up test containers. Let me think here. For network error, I wouldn't have to. I can do that without setting up test containers. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to call it DB connection error. Doesn't need to be a network error per se. It just needs to be an error talking to the database. Now here I want a valid name. I'm probably going to have like a connection closed error. It's probably what's going to happen here. Or something to that effect. I don't know if that's the exact verbiage it'll be. And internal server error would be the correct error code for that. So this test is going to fail because I haven't entered any logic to do that yet. So let's do that next. Now let's see, does this client have any children or whatever? No, it does not. So let's add a PG pool connection. Is it pgx.pool, I think? I'm going to need to add that, import that library and add it to go.mod. PGX, I think it's PGX pool here is the one I want. Now I need to go get that module. All right. So now there's an actual connection there. Of course, notice I haven't initiated this yet. That will be coming soon. For now, I don't need to initiate it. For now, I need it to well, maybe I do need to initiate it. Otherwise, I'm going to get a null pointer dereference, which is which would panic. That's not what I want. But well, let's do one step at a time. Follow. I always have to remind myself. People who like to debate TDD with me will like, you know, how is it so easy for you? It's like it's not easy for me. It's a discipline. TDD is a discipline. I have to think about it. I have to remember to follow the process. The process gets me there, and I'm getting ahead of myself right now. So the process is write a failing test, which I've done. Make the test pass. I'm going to get there one step at a time. Let's start to implement here. So for this particular test, I don't care what query I do. I just want to do any query. So let's just do something like this. I need the context. So let's take that context here now. That's fine. Create data. That's not actually the query I'm going to want to do ultimately, probably, but it's certainly fine for right now. And then we'll just return the error. Now, the problem is this test is going to panic because that pool is not defined. So the test still is not passing. We can get a step closer to that by making that be some kind of valid pool here. Let me think. So the way you... All right. So I need to connect to the database. I'm going to do it a hacky way. So one of the things about this testing library I talked about is you see here what it's doing is it's taking the database, the test name, and then a struct. It's a little bit magical in that instead of a struct, you can pass a function that returns a struct also. So I'm going to do that now. And that's really what the whole library is about. It allows me to do my setup in this function. So I'm going to do pool equals pgx pool dot, is it new pool? Is that the actual name of the function? I don't remember. Where's my, there it is, import name. I don't remember if that's the name or not. Yeah, I don't think so. Let's look at that codoc again. Function, let's do type. I think that's where it's going to be. Under pool, it's just called new. All right, new, takes a context, and then a DSN. And then it returns pool and an error. I don't know if this is going to succeed or not, because I don't know if it actually, I'm pretty sure it's going to fail, because it looks like it's going to try to connect to the database. That's why it's taking a context. So this is probably when we're going to add our test containers. But and then this becomes pool. Now, ultimately, I'm going to want a helper function that does this, so I don't have to copy this logic for every test I do. But that's part of the refactor phase of red-green refactor. This is going to fail, I'm certain, because yeah, I can't connect to that database. But that's okay. Let's go ahead and make a commit. Create a commit for the failing test. Now we need to talk to get test containers configured. Now I've done this on a bunch of projects before, so I'm going to take some shortcuts probably to make this easier to get there. But let's do it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a. Sometimes I put this in a new package. I don't think I need that in this case. I think I'll just create like a test containers _ test file, or maybe call it. Yeah, that's probably a good name. And once again, copy the silly license boilerplate. Now, we want test containers to start one copy of Postgres. I'm trying to think how much of this I'm just going to copy from another project and how much I'm going to walk through setting up. I'll probably just copy from another project. It's so much easier. Let me find another project that does this already. Well, actually, I already used test containers in this project for something else. So let me start with that. I use test containers to start CouchDB when running the CouchDB driver tests. So let's see if and that's what I have here. So I have a function called start CouchDB. Let's do something similar. Let's do func start. I'm going to lowercase it in this case since I don't need to export since it's all running in the same package. But in this case over here for CouchDB, it's run from another package. Start. Let's just call it start PG. And I don't know if it should take a context or not. I think it does not need a context. The thing with this context is I'm pretty sure that that's what triggers the shutdown. I'm not 100% sure of that either. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that when that context is canceled, it shuts down the container. And so I wouldn't want to pass t.context there because then as soon as that test passes, it would shut down the container, even if other tests, first test, even if other tests are still depending on it. So I probably just want to use a background context. So I don't need to take a context argument. And I don't need an image argument. I need an image argument for CouchDB because I test against different versions of CouchDB. Now, I may want to do that eventually for Postgres, but for now, I'll just pick a single version of Postgres to run tests against. I doubt I'll be using advanced features of Postgres where I would need to test against multiple versions, but maybe someday, just not right now. So I don't think I need any arguments here, but I do want to return a string and an error. The string would be the connection string to the database and an error in case there's a failure. The magic is going to be in how we call this start PG function later on. But for now, we're going to just do it like this. Now, so for CouchDB, as you see on the left here, test containers ships with some sort of, I don't know what they call them, modules or pre-configurations or something for popular services, including Postgres. It doesn't for CouchDB. So I had to do this sort of manually over here. Also, I'm using an old version of test containers over here for Postgres, though, and on a new version of Go with a new version of test containers, I can use their pre-configured thing, I'm pretty sure. So let me find that in another project where I'm using that. I'm going to do that off screen because it's in some client work, so I don't want to accidentally share client information with you. Actually, no, I'm wrong. I can share it. It's not a client. It's one of my own projects, so I can share that. I have to remember the name of it. All right, I should open this up in the same editor. You can see that VS Code is confused about all these imports that don't exist because it thinks it's in the wrong thing. But here we go. So I'm gonna look. It even has the same function signature. Why don't I just copy this function exactly as it is? Boom. Now Go modules is confused, so let's fix that. Test containers has a lot of dependencies. Oh, is something broken now? Maybe not. What's this? Oh, yeah. That could be annoying. Let me see if I can fix that to get rid of this. Did I have a replace? No, I don't know what's going on here. So I think the problem is that Kivik v4 depends on test containers, and I am requesting a different version of test containers, maybe? Let me read this closely. What is the problem? Ambiguous import. That's not cool. So multiple modules. That's an ancient module. Okay, I kind of know what's going on here. Try to fetch this specifically. See if that solves it. I think that import path moved modules at some point around 2022 or something. I don't know, but it made things okay. It looks like we're good now. Yeah. Okay, that wasn't so hard to fix after all. Okay. I don't need that. Okay. Actually, I do still need that. Because there's some constants here that I probably care about. Okay, actually, I don't care about with database. So basically with database is to create a default database. I don't need that for this project. I do need user and password. So let's copy those here. And we'll give them different values. Let's just still go with Kivik. Doesn't really matter what they are as long as they exist. All right, so now we have a function that should start Postgres version 16 with PostGIS. I don't need PostGIS for this. I do on this other project. So let's go to Docker Hub. Actually, before I do that, I want to decide which version of Postgres I should target. So I'm going to see what RDS and Google provide. I imagine they have the latest stable, but I don't know. SQL. Postgres 16, 17, 18. I didn't realize 18 was out yet. And I want to see what's supported here. Where do you have Postgres listed? It claims up to 17. That's Gemini telling me that, which I don't really trust, but it is from Google, so you'd expect it to be right? I want to validate. I don't know if 18 is actually stable or not. I was a little bit surprised to see that was listed. So I thought 17 just came out recently, but maybe I'm behind the times. Where's the list? Show me a list. It says 17. Google for plus 18. Apparently Postgres 18 is out. No, it's upcoming. Release date, 2025 question. Okay, so 17 apparently is the latest version of stable Postgres, which is what I was expecting. Yeah, Ryan says 18 is the latest beta. So that's in line with my uninformed expectation. So we're going to target Postgres 17 since both Amazon and Google support that. So let's find the official Postgres 17 Docker image. This should be easier to find. I don't want Bitnami. I want official Postgres. Postgres Docker Hub. There, that looks like it. Yeah, there's 18. I want 17. I don't want the Docker file. I want, actually what I want is to, what? Why is it showing ancient versions here? Can I, yeah, let's go for tags here. Filter 17. This is close enough. All I need is Postgres 17. So you just know the name. So I found it there. It's easier than I was expecting. Just do Postgres 17. Actually, maybe I want to be more specific than that, although I'll do 17.6. Wait, that says alpha. I don't want, no, that says Alpine. That's fine. 0.6. Do I want Alpine? Maybe. It's probably smaller. Yeah, that's probably a good idea to do Alpine, just to be a little bit smaller. So I'll go ahead and do that full tag there. Whoops, I don't want the whole pull thing. I just want the tag name. All right, so I'm pulling in Docker image for Postgres 17.6, Alpine 3.21. Okay, now I need to wire this up. Let's look back at this other file I had. So this, it's not the one I wanted. Let me go back to the other one for the other project. So I've done this sort of, so you can see, I'm going to copy this here. I create a global variable that contains a once values, a sync once values value. Basically that prevents me from starting the container more than once. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Now this is exported. I don't need it to be. So I'm going to rename this to start PG. No, you know what? I'll just rename this one to start Postgres. As long as they're different, that's what matters. And then I'll rename this to match start Postgres once. And now this is called from new. So let's create another function that wraps that one. That no. I think that's all I really need there. I could so I'm getting jumbled up in my head again. Now what I want to do is create a sort of constructor function or for my client object in tests. Now, I often put that in something called like common_test.go, since virtually all my tests are going to call that function. I could do that, and I probably will. The question then is, should test containers.test or should test containers test.go remain its own file, even though it's just like 50 lines of code, or should that go into common_test? I don't know. I'll figure that out. Let me do what I know I need to do. Common, wrong project. Once again, copy silly boilerplate license. That's not quite what I want. So what I want here is DSN error : equals, and then start. Is that right? Start Postgres. Yeah. So that calls this function. So another thing about this sync once values, once this function is called a single time, then subsequent calls to the same function just return the same values that were returned the first time. So that's what that once values does for me. So I could call it 1,000 times, and the first run is the only one that's ever run, and those values are cached and returned forever. Now you might notice I don't actually have a constructor for client. Well, I kind of do. It doesn't do this yet, though. I'll get to that. You may recall, if you were here last week, I had this file does have a new client, which returns that. It just returns this. So this is where some of that logic will go, but I'll add some more tests for this to flesh that part out. Right now, I'm focused on one thing at a time. I'm not sure why this is complaining. Oh, it has no value. Well, then I don't need to wrap it in a function. I can just pass it directly to cleanup. Now, one thing at a time. I was about to go off on another tangent. Don't want to do that right now. Okay. Now, I don't need all this boilerplate here because I'm not going to use a random made up thing. I'm going to use the value returned from this. So let's just change this to client. Let's try this. Now, what's wrong here? Oh, that's that thing I have open from this other project. Let's see what our tests do now. It's going to let me do -v because it should take a little while longer because it should be starting a Docker container. Let's see if it actually does that. Yeah, it's starting a Docker container. It's pulling down Postgres 17, blah, blah, blah. And it failed for the right reasons this time. It failed because there was not a connection error. So let's make sure there's a connection error. And we'll do that by doing client.pool.close. We'll just close that pool prematurely. So it is being open. The pool is being open right here. We connect to Postgres, and then we immediately close that connection so that the test will fail. By the test fail, I mean, that's not what I mean. So that the call to the function will fail and the test will pass. That's what I actually meant. So here it's still failing because it's the wrong error message. The error message is closed pool, not connection closed, but same spirit. Let's just change the text to that so it passes. It's passing. Great. Let's commit that. Now, there are two specific things I want to change here. The first is I don't actually want to start Postgres every time I run go test because it's slowish. I like to have, so I definitely want to use Postgres for my tests, for many of my tests, because that's literally what I'm testing. I'm testing against Postgres. It's virtually impossible to meaningfully test this code without talking to Postgres. I could use mocks, but then I'm testing my mocks. I need to actually test, does this code work with Postgres? However, it's slow, and I don't want to do that all the time. So I'm going to guard this with a little, I'm going to use a little guard here. I think I'll put it, well, let me think. What I want to do is only run the tests that require Docker when a particular flag is set. And I already used that flag, and the other one is the flag I have is use TC. That's an environment variable, so like this. So I need to do the same thing here. I think the place to put that is just probably right here. So let me just find the logic. I can just copy what I did before. It's pretty simple. No, it's not actually here. Where did I put that? Well, now I'm confused. I was pretty sure I had that somewhere. Oh, I see. Yeah, so this is the check right here. Yeah, I'll just put it right here. Yeah, I think that's fine. Like it would kind of be nice to put it here, but this doesn't have access to the testing.t, and it can't because this is called by sync1. So something wrapping that has to do that. So this is fine for now. I may need to change it later on if I have multiple methods or functions that need to do that, but I don't know if I will. So this is probably fine. So now you can see that's the only change I've made is if use TC is not set, then I skip the test. Now if I run go test, it should run very quickly. Oh, I'm in the wrong directory. There. Tests run virtually instantaneously because they're not talking to Postgres. But if I use TC equals 1, then it takes the time to start Postgres, an extra 10 or 15 seconds, and it runs the full test suite. Now, the other thing I want to change here, and this is going to be a little bit more complicated, and I have to decide if I want to do it right now or a little bit later, but I would like to, I want all of my tests to be independent of each other. So, if I write some data to my database for one test, I don't want that to be visible in another test, and I don't want to have to clean it up, and I don't want to have to wait, I don't want to have to run my tests in sequence so that they can clean up. And there's a neat little library that will let us do that I'm using in this other project I was just looking at. So let me just open that up and see if we can copy that. Called PGTestDB. Let me just pull up the GitHub page for that. If you ever use Postgres in Go, you should definitely be using this package. PGTestDB is a Go library that helps you write efficient database backend tests. What it does is it creates so you start your Postgres database, then you call this PGTestDB, and it sort of creates a proxy of sorts. Whenever you connect to it, it creates a copy of a clone of that database. So let me back up a bit. You run your database, you create your database, and run your migration scripts. Then PGTestDB clones that, which is virtually instantaneous with Postgres. Lets you run your tests on that. When your test is done, it deletes that clone. So you can create like dozens or even hundreds of clones simultaneously while your tests run, and you can write to them all you want. And then when you end the test, it just deletes that data. And it's very, very fast thanks to Postgres magic. So that's what I'm going to be using here. If I can just remember how to wire it up. So this happens in, yeah, so let me see. That's going to be over in common test. That's going to be here. So here we've created our pool. It needs to happen before we do the pool. It happens between here and here, I think. So first we need to, well, let's just, yeah, okay. I have to remember how this works. Okay, I'm actually gonna, put it here, and I'm gonna do, I'm gonna move this USTC wrapper stuff into this new function. So I'm gonna create a function here called new Postgres, backup for lack of a better term. And I'm gonna have it just return a string. You can see that this function signature now matches this one. It's just a different name. And I'm going to copy thelper and this part into there. Now I can get rid of it here. Actually, I can copy this as well, or move rather. Return DSN. So first, and then I'm going to have, okay, there. That's essentially an extract function refactor. So there's no functional change. Wrong directory. So I think you can see that that's just a refactor. I just did an extract function, right? So no functional change there at all. But now I have a more natural place over here to add this new logic that I need. And I can more or less just copy what I've got over here. So here I got my DSN. That's right here. So I need to parse that DSN. I don't remember why. Then I get this host import out. So I guess this configuration needs some special formatting. So I'm going to just sort of probably copy all of this and then change variable names. So let's just step through it and make sure it makes sense. So we have the DSN that we were already getting. Now we're parsing it using URL parse. The DSN is a URL, right? It's a Postgres ://URL. So we just parse it using the standard library's URL parser. Then we use the standard library's net.split host port to split the host. So we get the host part and the port part. Find project root. I don't actually remember what that is. That's something specific to this. And I don't know if I care about it. I think that is for migrations. I don't have any migrations here. So I don't think I need that. Now, I'm not sure how I handle this part since I don't have migrations. And I don't think I will have migrations. I don't think migrations will ever be part of this project. So I don't think that's ever going to be necessary. So let me see what I do here. Now, actually, first I need to import this missing library. So, oh, it's already listed there. I just need to go get it. All right, so that should solve that. Now, custom is like new, but after creating a new database, it closes any connections or returns the configuration details of that database so that you can connect to it explicitly. Do I need that? I don't know. What I want to know is how do I skip a migrator? New connects to a Postgres server and creates a connection and connects to a fresh database instance. The database is prepared and migrated by the given migrator by get or creating a template. Okay, let me go to the Go doc because I don't know what to do if I don't need a migrator. Maybe not hit there. That's what I want. I want not migrator. That's what I was looking for. Perfect. So instead of this new migrator, which was my own custom migrator for that other application, which required the root of the director of the thing, I could do pg test db.not migrator. Okay. Now let's see. Yeah, I think that's fine. Let's see how if my test still passes, because this shouldn't affect anything for a single test, right? This will only matter once I have multiple tests. But let's make sure that my single test still works. Looks like it does. Just reviewing this to make sure it looks correct, and I do think it is. Add pg test db to run db tests in isolation. Great. I think we're done with that, and I think we can get back to writing interesting features now. So next on our to-do list is a database that already exists or database created successfully. I'm going to do the first case first, since the second one kind of depends on that first one. Let's close some of these files we don't need anymore. Don't need client. I need createdb.go. All right. So I don't want anything there. Now, this test I expect will pass, even though it's incomplete. And that's because the test is incomplete. Like, it's not doing any interesting assertions. Oh, doesn't like... Oh, interesting. Why didn't that happen before? I don't know why that didn't happen before. Do I need to... Let me check something here. I suppose... I don't know why that didn't happen. Why didn't that happen before? Now, I think I know why it's happening. It's because I didn't have that import there. But that should have happened before. Still not working. Oh, actually, I'm... okay. I'm going to just reset this. So now I'm back to the state that I thought was working before. So I did minus v. Did I just miss the fact that it failed and I didn't notice? Let me scroll up and see if I can confirm that. It did fail. Okay. I just went too fast. All right. Well, that's good to know then. Mystery solved. But let's solve the bug. So I think the problem is that this PG TestDB library uses a standard libraries SQL or database SQL driver, which I'm not using, but I can certainly use it for that. But that means I need to import the correct driver for that purpose from PGX. So PGX has a standard library compatibility layer. I just need to import that, which is down here somewhere. Studlib. So I just need to import that. I think that will do what we need. Let's run the test again. Well, it at least gave us a different error message. Local database Kivik does not exist. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's true. Don't know why it's trying to use that. Yeah. Comment on Twitch from Curious E1K, Curious Elk. Yeah, new error equals progress. That is definitely true in this case. Let me add a comment here so you know why this is done. Postgres driver for PG test DB. But why? Okay, so actually this is actually fine. Curious Elk prefers Twitch over LinkedIn Live. Why? LinkedIn Live is so amazing. I'm being completely sarcastic. LinkedIn Live is kind of a mess. I agree with you. So I'm actually curious what's failing here. User equals Kivik, database equals nothing. Oh, I see. So that defaults to a database of name of Kivik. I have to figure out, I have to think how I'm going to solve this. So that the thing is, I don't want to connect to a particular database necessarily. No, I guess I do. I do want to connect to a particular database. Now that I think about it, I was confused because of the difference in terminology between CouchDB and Postgres. I do want to connect to a specific database, but and that's because the reason I was confused is CouchDB refers to things called databases, which are tables in Postgres. So I was thinking that when you create a DB in CouchDB terminology, you'll be creating a DB in Postgres. That's not true. We'll be creating a table in Postgres. So I do want a database to connect to. So that means I need to go back over here where you may recall I deleted this with database thing. I need to add that. Let's test database. We'll just call it Kivik. It doesn't matter at all what it is as long as it's consistent. That's the point. All right, so there we go. That's I'm thinking ahead again. I need to stop doing that. Does this have a database in it? Yes, it does. User password. Let's add database. All right, let's try this again and see what happens. Yay, now it's working. I'm just going to append that to the previous commit. So I was getting ahead of myself thinking about how am I going to convert a Postgres, how am I going to specify, because CouchDB has a host also. My thought was I could just pass a Postgres, I misspoke. CouchDB has the concept of like a URL to connect to as well. My thought was I could just use the Postgres URL as the CouchDB URL. The problem is CouchDB needs an additional parameter, which is its version of a database or Postgres's version of a table. I don't know how I'm going to solve that. I'll figure that out later, possibly today. But yeah, yeah. I tend to get way ahead of myself. Again, remind myself, follow the system. The system is one failing test at a time. And right now, I don't have a failing test, so I'm going to add one. Let's add one for creating a database. And once again, I added unnecessary stuff here. So this test will likely pass for the wrong reasons. And it does. Because it's not actually doing the right thing. It's creating a database. It should be creating a table. And I need something to validate that that is done. So before I bother with this, I'm going to work on my assertions here. So what I'm going to do is, let me think. I could either add a function. I could do something like this, a little closure that has custom check logic in it. In this case, I think I'm just going to do it down here. If error does not equal nil, then just early return. Otherwise, I can continue on, to validate that the database is created. It's not what I want. I want you to actually check var found bool. Let's do it like that. tt.client.pool.query row. That seems fine. That's almost fine. So this is going to fail. I don't think this is the right. I need this to select a table name, but one step at a time. Let's see if this fails the right way now, or sort of the right way. Yeah, so that's why I did that separately. I wanted to see what this problem was. Cannot scan int for, okay, why? This should just be true. Select true. That should work. Trying to scan an integer into a Boolean. That was the error. Okay, so now let's change this to see if, well, let's do it this way. That's fine. I don't care what the table is actually called or what it actually looks like right now. I just want to see if it's created. Let's see if this is smart enough to autocomplete for me. PG tables. There we go. I don't know why it has a limit 1. There should only be a single match, right? It's a table, for goodness sake. So now the test is passing. Let's validate that it's passing for the right reasons by commenting out this. Yep, that's great. Wait a minute. Failed to verify database creation, closed pool. I don't know why that happened. Oh, wait. It shouldn't get that far. So that's fine there. Oh, I know why this happened. It's because I'm no longer triggering a database operation, so it doesn't actually return that error. Anyway, I've confirmed that the test that I care about is failing for the right reason. All right, one more test case for right now. I should have removed this to do comment. Now, just to be clear, this table structure is completely bogus right now. I don't know what the table structure will be exactly. I have an idea because I did this for SQLite, and I'll probably be copying some of that for this. But for right now, this is definitely not what I want. The point isn't that I have the correct schema being created. The point is, does it create the table? It actually needs to create more than one table, which we'll get to later. But for now, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm following the system. one failing test at a time. Just adding a note here to myself to remember to check what options are valid and if we need to add tests for those. So here is a case where I want to use this format. If I'll just copy this because I need to, I don't want to close it this time though. I want to create the database more than once. So now I expect a different error message and a different failure. Let's see what happens. I should delete this from the to-do list as well. All right, I got a 500 when I want something else, but otherwise it looks like it worked correctly. Relation testDB already exists. Okay, so the reason for that is because I'm not detecting the error and giving it the right status code that I should. So let's do that. Pardon me. All right, I just let that thing, Copilot, automatically complete that. That's really ugly code. Well, let's see if it does the right thing. Does it set the right status? Nope. Duplicate database is not what I want. I want duplicate duplicate table or relation. Let's see what the proper code is for that, if I can find that here. I know these codes are defined somewhere in one of these libraries. Probably PG Proto, maybe. Constants, nope, it's not there. Where is that? PG type, that's probably where it is. I don't know for sure, but let's see. There's a bunch of stuff there. I don't see errors though. Well, I have this referenced in another project, so let me see where. What was the name of the PG? Here, let me search for this. Should find some references here. PG error code. All right, that's the library I'm looking for. Now let me pull it up here. Come on. It doesn't like those quotes, does it? All right. Here we go. Search for relation. Nope. Table. Duplicate. Duplicate table. I don't know. I just thought I just searched for table. Whatever. What's it called? PG error code. Yeah, I don't need a comment explaining a well-defined or well-named constant. I don't know why this is duplicated. Get rid of that. Let's see how the test passes now, if the test passes now. Oh, wrong application. Go mod tidy. Let's try that. All right, the status looks right. Now we're getting a different error. I'm getting a better error because I'm not calling it relation, I'm calling it database, which is the CouchDB terminology. Good. Now, ultimately, I'm going to want to extract a lot of this logic into some sort of helper function because I'm going to want to use the same logic other places. But for now, it's fine to put it right there. I'll do that later on. Got a question here on chat. I have an industry question for you. From your Go, TDD, and trunk-based development experience, do modern teams still benefit from a dedicated QA role, or is quality better owned entirely by developers? Great question. The answer is no to either of those. Dedicated QA roles have a place, in my opinion. I get in a lot of heat sometimes, or people who share my view get into a lot of heat sometimes. That QA people think that we don't like QA people. That's not true. I don't like QA. I don't think we should ever have dedicated QA folks doing regression testing. That is a huge waste of human potential. It's humans are terrible at regression testing. Let me put it that way. All humans. I don't care how professional of a tester you are. Humans are terrible at regression testing. We are slow. We are inaccurate. We make mistakes. We are terrible at regression testing. So if you have a human doing regression testing, fix that problem. Computers are great at regression testing. They are fast. They're reliable. They do the same thing every single time. Having dedicated QA people can be beneficial, but they should be doing two things. They should be helping to manage the testing infrastructure. Maybe that's a testing environment. Maybe that's a bank of mobile phones if you're doing tests on real live mobile phones, for example. Maybe that's maintaining Playwright or whatever. So that's one thing. They can be maintaining the testing infrastructure that you use automatically, hopefully. And they can be doing exploratory testing, as it's often called, or usability testing. They should be, but they should not. They should never, ever, ever, ever. I cannot stress that enough. Be a bottleneck between developers and production, ever. Anybody who wants to fight me on that, I will die on that hill. They should be doing their their exploratory testing and so on, parallel to the release process. And I'm not saying that because I don't like QA people slowing things down or whatever. I say that because it hurts quality. It absolutely hurts quality. One of the biggest, maybe the biggest cause of poor quality software is slow feedback cycles. If I'm a developer and I build something and it takes me, let's say, a month to hear from a user whether or not it works or not, because it takes a month to get into production, by the time it gets back to me, I've forgotten what I was working on. I don't have that context in my head anymore. I maybe don't care. Maybe I don't even work there anymore. I might have a new job, but someone else has to pick it up. On the other hand, if I can get that code in front of customers in the next 15 minutes and start seeing logs and metrics and maybe get a call from a customer that something broke or see firsthand that something broke, I can fix that very quickly and quality goes up. So it's not that I don't want QA people or testers or whatever you want to call them testing my code. That's not it at all. It's that I know that the best way to make my code good is to get it in front of real traffic as quickly as possible and get that feedback as quickly as possible. So get the manual testing, whether it's by QA people or developers or anybody else, get the manual testing out of that loop. Get the manual testing to be running parallel to that and providing feedback into your backlog to give you feature ideas and improvement ideas on how to make things faster and better and smoother and quicker and whatever it is that your users need. So QA is fine as a dedicated role if they do things that improve quality, which necessarily means they are not part of the software delivery process. They are running parallel to that. It's a long answer. I hope that's helpful. Okay. Let me see here. I'll follow up here. So when a modern team, so in a modern team, can a QA help excel that feedback loop, provide value early in the software development lifecycle? I.e., I get involved at a requirement discovery and work with devs and business analysts to define the acceptance criteria, find potential hidden. Absolutely. That's where QAs are most valuable, probably. So, I mean, that it's two sides of a coin, right? Part of the QA's role is to do that exploratory testing, figure out what can be done to improve the product, and the other part of that is to communicate that to the developers so that they can do it. So what you're talking about now is that communicating to the developers part. So yeah, absolutely. If you have insights into what things should be done, either to fix an existing feature or maybe it's a new feature that hasn't gone out yet, but you have ideas on how to make it better from the beginning, absolutely be involved in that. That's where QA should definitely be involved. I don't like, incidentally, this is kind of incidental to what you're talking about, I think, but I don't like having a QA in the title, because I do think QA is the responsibility of everybody on the team. I mean, we're all here to ensure quality. And also probably for historical reasons, there's a lot of baggage with that, because often you have QA testers or engineers or whatever the title is that sort of serve as gatekeepers. They're the last ones that sign off on the thing before it goes live. We've known for decades now that that's not the way to build quality products, whether it's software or automobiles or airplanes or anything. We've known that for decades as an industry. It's still news to a lot of individuals, but the industry has known that for decades. So I'm not excited about that title, but having somebody who is looking out for. So I guess to sort of flesh out that point, in my mind, that role, whether it's QA or tester or whatever, should be really closely related to UX, which might seem unintuitive to a lot of people, because UX is often misunderstood as well. User experience is often misconstrued as UI. It's because a lot of UX developers or whatever basically spend their time designing mockups, but real UX is about the user experience. That's what UX means, right? So that's not just when they log into your mobile app or whatever, but that's the experience of their whole journey using your product, and that's what testers should be involved in. Maybe they're not. So I guess I kind of think of this QA/tester role as sort of like a junior UX or UX helper or something like that, UX assistant. I think those two roles really do belong very closely together. They're often, sadly, put at opposite ends. You have UX at the beginning and QA at the end, and they never talk to each other, and the developers in the middle, and that's just absolutely wrong. I don't know. I could rant about this forever, but I don't want to bore everybody here who's here to learn about Go. I'm happy to talk to you about that more, by the way. Find me on LinkedIn or send me an email, and we can chat about this more at length if you want to. Okay, where was I? Okay, tests are passing. I wanted to look up options. So I'm gonna start with the options that are provided to CouchDB, which is right here, and see if any of them make sense for us. I don't think they do. So the only options you can provide are related to clustering, which I probably will never support in the Postgres backend. I mean, if you want clustering, just use real CouchDB. That's kind of my feeling. So I don't think. So here you can say how many replicas. So so you have a cluster of 10 CouchDB nodes. You can say the default is 3 replicas. So it would create your database with a configuration that by default each document gets written to 3 of those 10 nodes. You can, and then partitioning. I don't think I will ever use either of these in the Postgres backend. Those are features that are like high-end super scaling things, and Postgres, my intention for this Postgres driver is to be the opposite end of that for small scale stuff. So I don't think I need those. So I can delete this, and this options thing can just remain empty probably forever. I don't think I'll ever need that. At least not for those options. Maybe I'll think of some other reason to have that in the future, but not now. I'm just going to commit that along with the last. I'm going to amend that to last commit. Okay. Next, I think what I want to do is revisit the tests for this. Do I have tests for that? Whoops. Yes, I do. I want to revisit the test for this. And so I just do some basic validation here, right? I want to revisit the test for this and make sure that a successful connection, let's add some to-do list here. Successful connection has a valid database connection, right? So this is going to sort of flesh out the thing. Flesh out the rest of the missing link between this function and the one I was just testing. I also want to check if there's options that are valid here. I don't know if there are, but I'll do a quick check on that. So here you can see I did sort of generic table-driven tests, and that's probably fine here. I'm going to refactor this to early return. So I do that, and then I can click on refactor and invert if, and it flips it around. And now my test is more readable because I don't have all this part indented. Okay, let's do a successful one. The thing is, with a successful one, you know what this should be? I don't even need to test for that error thing. I don't think. Let's do it like this because I'm going to put some new logic here. Before I do that, let me make sure the current tests still run. No, I did something wrong. Valid DSN with DB name. Status. Okay, what did I do wrong? Let me just restart. Okay. Oh, this says specifically bad request. That's not what I want. I'm going to change this to want error and want status. Now it can be specific. So here, it can be specific is the right word. It can be specific per test is what I meant to say. Now I can get rid of this silly conditional. So I'm in part of the refactor phase now, right? And I forgot to add the want status. Yeah, okay. Actually, I don't want a status there. I want a status here. Should be HTTP. And same here. All right, now I basically want to extend this one. I don't need that explicit false there because that's the default value for Boolean. I want to extend this, or I don't want to extend it, but I want to do if error does not equal nil, then return. And then here I want to check, basically I want to check client.pool equals nil. That's an error. Isn't that the name I gave it? Wasn't it pool? Yeah. Oh, because I got I need to do client, and then I need to do a type assertion here. What's wrong here? Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's call this C for now. There, that should do it. This should fail because I got a nil pool because I haven't actually done that assignment here, right? So that's the thing I'm trying to test. Where did it go? It's over here somewhere. So now, this is a little bit icky-ish. I'm not sure how I want to handle this, but I'll explain what I'm thinking. I'm already getting ahead of myself yet again. Pool, error. Context.todo, config. Why does it want v4 all of a sudden? I don't understand that. Connect config. What? Okay. Let me see how this is supposed to work. What function accepts this then? Parse config. Parses config from blah, blah, blah. The return may be modified however strongly. All right, what do I pass it to? I don't know what to pass it to. Let's see if we can figure that out over here. I don't feel like this is what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for. New with config, that's what I want. What? Well, I think I could just pass the DS in here. Let's see if that works. But then it would just be new, I think. I really only need the new with config. The reason I was using this before was just as a shortcut to parse the DSN ahead of time. If I can detect the error here, I won't need to do that. The other reason to use that parse config thing is if you want to set up hooks and stuff, which I don't know if I'll need that or not, but I certainly don't need it right now. Yeah, so this is not going to work exactly. Okay, so I need to change this to a string so I can actually test what the error is. I mean, I don't have to, but that seems like a good idea. I'm just gonna put X's in here for now until I figure out what the actual thing is. And then certainly is easier to do it this way, the way I had it before, because then I get those. Let me go ahead and do this just to set the expectations at least. But I might stick with that way also, because it does seem easier than trying to later detect what type of error I got. This is a regular expression, so those parentheses throw it off a little bit. Let me put dots in place. Yeah, okay, now the test is passing again. Is it all passing again? I guess so. Why? This should be failing for the valid DSN with DB name. Why is that not failing? Why is that not failing? And also, is there a different parse config here? There is a different parse config here. Let's try using that one. Hopefully it doesn't change the hopefully it doesn't change the error messages. Oh, it's completely different now. Okay, why? Oh, it includes that other one. Okay, so this kind of makes sense. There we go. Let's try that. All right, so the original two tests are passing again. I still don't know why this is succeeding, because I would have expected this to actually try to connect and fail because it can't connect to this database. Maybe what is the context used for? I don't know. Create idle resource. That's strange. Okay, well, anyway, whatever this is doing, it's launching a Go routine that does create idle resources, whatever that actually is. I'm not sure. It's the only place that context is used. Create resources. Okay, so I think this is just creating connections. That's weird, though, that it doesn't actually, I mean, when it takes a context, that suggests that it's going to, block, but it doesn't. So we don't actually get an error here. When would we get an error here? Let me see when that would happen. The only place we get an error is if it fails to, if puddle.newPool returns an error. When would that return an error? If config.maxSize is less than 1, it returns an error. Is that the only possible time? It's so weird. Like, okay. It tells me I can effectively ignore that error. I'm not going to, because this API could change, or the internals could change. That's weird. I would have expected this to actually connect, but it doesn't. So anyway, I think I'm doing the right thing here. I suppose I could add it. No, I don't even know how to add a test because I don't have any way to set that, whatever that max thing was, to a weird value. So I don't have a way to trigger this error without changing my public API, which I'm not going to do, or making an option. But anyway, I think it's working now. So let's add our necessary commit. Getting close to the end of the time. Oh, I forgot to create a branch here. I'll call it create DB, since that's the main thing I worked on. Go ahead and push this up and create a pull request and get this merged. And I'll probably end here for the day, since there's not really time to start on something new. And then next week, I intend to do this again, same time, same place, and can work on, continuing. So I think the next step is to destroy a database once it's been created. And then, a few the other things we saw on that list. I'll work on some of those things and just keep making progress here. So anyway, thank you for joining me. I think I'll sign off a little bit early because I don't want to just stare at my screen talking about randomness for the next 8 minutes. Unless somebody has a question, I could talk about QA again or something. But I think I'll sign off. So I guess that's it. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you next week when I'll be doing more of this. Bye.